My name is Matt O'Neill. I'm a lawyer at Fox O'Neill and Shannon in Milwaukee, and I've been representing the Midwest College of Oriental Medicine for 20 years and have significant experience in acupuncture, the regulation of acupuncture, the dangers of acupuncture, and the rules and the laws regarding acupuncture. This presentation addresses the issue of dry needling, which has come up in the last several years, where the acupuncture community has been aware that physical therapists and chiropractors around the country have increasingly been practicing acupuncture under the term dry needling. We have brought a challenge specifically to the Physical Therapy Credentialing Board of Wisconsin and its approval of dry needling. So far, the board has maintained its position, which was first set forth in an FAQ published in 2009 on its website and stayed on the website through 2012. That FAQ is set forth here, and what it said in question and answer form is dry needling within the scope of practice of a physical therapist in Wisconsin. The answer given was that the statute 448.50 sub 6 allows for therapeutic intervention within the scope of physical therapy. As this process uses sterile techniques, the surface skin is cleaned, it does not draw blood, and the physical therapists are trained in blood-body precautions, the board considers this within the realm of therapeutic intervention. Trigger point dry needling is within the scope of physical therapy practice and may be performed provided the licensed physical therapist is properly educated and trained. That FAQ disappeared at the end of 2012 and was restated this year as a position statement set forth on the website with the exact same question and answer language. Our challenge to this particular FAQ and this position statement is premised on the fact that this has been viewed widely as formal approval by the Physical Therapy Board for the practice of dry needling by physical therapists in Wisconsin. You can see from several websites, including MyoPain Seminars, they point to this ruling by the board as approving the practice for any physical therapist properly educated and trained in Wisconsin. Connecticut also refers to the PTA board and refers to its approval of the practice as allowing dry needling in Wisconsin. Now, what are our objections to this practice? First, dry needling is not defined by the PT board. Second, dry needling, and we'll define this later, is really acupuncture. Third, the FAQ and the position statement, they don't require any safety precautions whatsoever. Fourth, dry needling is not in fact therapeutic intervention, despite the board's finding to the contrary. Fifth, the Wisconsin legislature should decide if dry needling is appropriate or inappropriate for non-licensed acupuncturists. And finally, the PT board improperly engaged in administrative rulemaking. First of these, dry needling is not defined. The position statement simply states dry needling uses sterile techniques, surface skin is cleaned, does not draw blood, and the physical therapists are trained in blood-body precautions. There's no support given for the statement. There's no basis for the statement. There's no medical background for the statement. And there's absolutely nothing that is set forth in the statement that tells us how dry needling is subject to any legal or medical protocols. While it states that therapists are trained in blood-body precautions, there's no requirement set forth in the FAQ or position statement that there has to be blood work training relating to the use of needles. Second, dry needling is in fact acupuncture. Our statutes 451.01 define acupuncture as, quote, inserting acupuncture needles, close quote, at certain points of the body to promote, maintain, or to restore health. The dry needles that are used in the PTs and by chiropractors are in fact acupuncture needles. It's the same suppliers, it's the same labels, they come from the same place, and they are approved for acupuncture. The American Association of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine has stated unequivocally, quote, we consider dry needling to fall squarely within the range of acupuncture practice. It is illegal in Wisconsin for a non-licensed person to practice acupuncture. That's Wisconsin Statute 451.04 sub 1. One provider of dry needling, the dryneedlingcourses.com, acknowledges that dry needling has its origin in acupuncture. The Oregon Court of Appeals, in a currently pending matter, has concluded that dry needling is substantially the same as the insertion of needle treatment modality of acupuncture. A Mayo Clinic study confirmed that 93.3% of what are called trigger points by the physical therapy community correspond to the classic acupuncture points that have been used for centuries in acupuncture. The Oregon Medical Board concluded in a 2010 letter as follows. In summary, acupuncture and dry needling use the same tool, acupuncture needles, the same points, the same purpose, treating pain, and the same needling techniques. This is why the Oregon Medical Board and its acupuncture committee voted that dry needling is in fact the practice of acupuncture. Third basis for our challenge is that the position statement doesn't require any safety precautions. By contrast, Section 451.12, applicable to acupuncturists, requires specific training for needlework, and it deals with the prevention of infection to the patient and to the treater, the sterilization of the needles, safe disposal of potentially infectious materials, cleansing needles with antiseptic solution, and sterilization of needles with the use of an autoclave. The administrative code applicable to acupuncturists, Code RL 72, entitled Safe Practice, incorporates these same safety requirements and requires contact, for example, with a physician before needling a patient with a cardiac condition, with hypertension, or respiratory issues, because there are ancillary dangers with the use of needles with those patients. The FAQ and position statement for physical therapists doesn't require any safety precautions. Rather, it approves the practice of needle insertion by a physical therapist with no safety restrictions whatsoever. This is, in fact, a dire public safety issue. Fourth, dry needling is not therapeutic intervention. Section 448.506 defines therapeutic intervention as a purposeful and skilled interaction between a physical therapist and a patient, and if appropriate, individuals involved in the patient's care, using physical therapy procedures or techniques that are intended to produce changes in the patient's condition and that are consistent with diagnosis and prognosis. It simply begs the question to identify dry needling as a therapy procedure or technique. It's not trained, it wasn't posed to the board. The question was posed to the board in the first place whether it's therapeutic, and they simply said yes without defining why. In fact, dry needling is not part of the standard curriculum for any physical therapist training at all by any schools. Rather, it's taught by for-profit seminars, places like MyoPain Seminars and Kineticor. This is a screenshot of the MyoPain seminars. You will see they teach various seminars, and basically it runs 1 or 2 days, and that's all the training that is presented for someone to put needles in a patient, which is in fact acupuncture. MyoPain Seminars states that their seminars are accredited, and if you look at it, it's not real accreditation. It's accredited by certified athletic trainers. It's accredited by the Maryland Acupuncture Board and accredited by the National Certification Board for Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork. This is not any body that should give anyone comfort in having a person insert needles into their body. Fifth, the legislature is the body that should decide if dry needling is appropriate for physical therapists or for chiropractors. The PT Board's charter is to interpret and implement the existing laws, not to expand the scope of practice. If dry needling is going to be approved as a physical therapy technique, the legislature should consider the exact same safety restrictions that are set forth in Section 451.12 and RL 72 for acupuncturists. Proper legislative hearings and findings would need to be conducted before such persons who aren't trained at all in the insertion of needles are allowed to insert needles through a patient's skin. Compare, an acupuncturist receives 1,900 hours, that's a minimum, of education, including 660 clinical hours supervised. Part of that training is where not to insert a needle, as well as where to insert a needle. Dry needling, by contrast, is essentially a 100-hour course from a for-profit, unaccredited entity with no clinical work whatsoever. The sixth objection is that the PT Board is improperly engaging in rulemaking. Wisconsin Law 227.01 defines a rule as a regulation, standard, statement of policy, or general order that is issued to implement or interpret a statute. 227.11 subsection 2A gives the PT Board the authority to promulgate rules interpreting the provisions of any statute enforced or administered by the agency. And subchapter 3 of chapter 448 is enforced and administered by the board. This is in fact what it can do, but what it hasn't done. The FAQ and position statement purports to interpret section 448.50 as allowing dry needling within the scope of therapeutic intervention. Clearly constitutes a general policy regarding physical therapy and is thus a rule. The rulemaking process, however, must be done through statutory rulemaking, which involves the ability of the public and other professionals to provide input in the creation of the rule. That didn't happen. There's other concerns. Professional malpractice insurance. Is dry needling covered when it's not part of the curriculum and not trained other than in the for-profit? There's potential for Medicare fraud. What codes are the physical therapists using when they practice dry needling? There's no CPT code for dry needling. The only CPT code that applies to solid needles is for acupuncture, and false Medicare coding is illegal. There's also a labeling issue. Are physical therapists using needles that have been approved by the FDA only for use by licensed acupuncturists? Which led to our request, and remains our request for the Physical Therapist Board, is to remove any approval of dry needling from the board's website and to replace it with a new position statement that dry needling, in fact, has not been approved as a practice for physical therapists in Wisconsin. The alternatives, which are being considered now, is a formal petition for rulemaking under the Wisconsin statutes to limit dry needling to licensed acupuncturists, or if that fails, litigation challenging the board's FAQ and position statement as an unauthorized administrative rule in violation of Chapter 227 and as approving the unlicensed practice of acupuncture. And that wraps the PowerPoint, and that is our position with respect to the unauthorized practice of dry needling by physical therapists in Wisconsin. Thank you.